When I arrived home early from my business trip, I found my son crying in the backyard shed while my brother's family was having a pool party in our house. My wife laughed. Jake needed to learn his place since his cousins are visiting. Blood relatives come first. My brother nodded. That's just how family works. I stayed silent, but what I did next made them all regret everything. This is about my son Jake, who is 9 years old and absolutely everything to me. He's adopted, something my family has apparently never forgotten. Let me start from the beginning. I'm David, 36, and I work as a regional sales manager for a medical equipment company. I travel frequently for work, which means I'm away from home 2 to 3 days a week. About 4 years ago I went through a devastating divorce with my ex-wife Rachel. She decided she wanted a different life and left both Jake and me to pursue her art career in California. The divorce was messy, but I got full custody because Rachel basically signed away her rights to focus on her new life. My parents Robert and Linda live in a large suburban house about 20 minutes from mine. After the divorce, my finances were strained with legal costs and suddenly being a single parent. My wife Emma, who I'd been dating for 2 years, suggested we move in together to help with costs and so Jake would have a stable home environment. Emma seemed to love Jake and he bonded with her quickly. We got married a year later and everything seemed perfect. Emma's family welcomed Jake, but my family, that's a different story entirely. My brother Marcus is 3 years younger than me and has always been the favorite child. He married his college girlfriend Amy and they have twin daughters Sophia and Chloe who are 8 years old. Marcus works in finance and they live in an expensive neighborhood. Amy has never worked, she's been a stay-at-home mom focused on the girls' activities and social events. Here's the thing about Marcus and Amy, they've always made subtle comments about Jake being adopted. When Jake would excel at something, Marcus would mention how the twins were naturally gifted because of good family genetics. When Jake would struggle with anything, Amy would suggest maybe he needed special help because we didn't know his background. Emma and I have been living in our house for 3 years now. It's a nice place with a pool and a big backyard. Jake loves swimming and has friends over regularly. He's doing well in school, plays soccer, and is learning guitar. His teacher says he has real musical talent. Jake is also incredibly kind and thoughtful. He always helps with chores and takes care of our dog Buddy without being asked. He's been excited about 4th grade starting next week. The incident that changed everything happened 2 weeks ago on a Friday evening. I was supposed to be away on a business trip until Sunday, but the client meeting got cancelled and I decided to come home early to surprise Jake and Emma. I had been gone since Wednesday and I missed them. When I pulled into our driveway at around 8 p.m., I noticed Marcus's car and Amy's SUV parked outside. I could hear music and laughing coming from the backyard. I figured they were having an impromptu family gathering, which was fine. But when I walked around to the backyard, I was shocked. The twins were in the pool with Emma and Amy while Marcus was grilling on our deck. They had clearly been there for hours based on the empty bottles and food containers scattered around, but Jake was nowhere to be seen. I called out hello and everyone looked surprised to see me. Emma jumped out of the pool looking flustered. "Daddy, you're home early," she said, but not in an excited way, more like she was caught doing something wrong. "Where's Jake?" I asked, looking around. Marcus shrugged casually. "Oh, he's around somewhere, probably inside playing video games or something." Amy laughed and said something about how Jake was probably happier inside anyway since he wasn't much of a swimmer. Something felt wrong. Jake loves swimming and he would never miss a chance to be in the pool with family visiting. I went inside to look for him, but he wasn't in his room or anywhere in the house. I called his name but got no response. I went back outside and asked again where Jake was. Emma looked uncomfortable and said he was probably in the shed playing with his toys. "What toys in the shed?" I asked. "We didn't keep toys in the shed, just lawn equipment and storage boxes." Marcus rolled his eyes and said I was being dramatic. Jake was fine, he just needed some space while the twins were visiting. I walked over to the shed and opened the door. What I found broke my heart. Jake was sitting on an old lawn chair in the corner of the shed. He had his tablet and a juice box, but he looked miserable. His eyes were red like he'd been crying. When he saw me, his face lit up. "Daddy, you're back early." He jumped up and hugged me tight. "Why are you out here, buddy?" I asked, trying to keep my voice calm. Jake looked toward the house, then back at me. "Aunt Amy said the pool was for real cousins today and that I should find something else to do. Emma said it would be better if I stayed out here so Sophie and Chloe could have fun without me getting in the way." "Daddy, am I not a real cousin?" Jake asked with tears in his eyes. My heart shattered. I knelt down and held Jake close. "You are my real son and their real cousin. Don't ever let anyone tell you different." I was furious, but I didn't want Jake to see it. "Let's go inside and get you cleaned up, then we'll figure this out." Jake nodded, but he seemed hesitant to go back to the house. "Daddy, do I have to go back out there with them?" he asked. I told him no, he could stay inside and we'd order pizza just for us. I got Jake settled in the living room with a movie and some snacks, then I went back outside to confront my family. Emma immediately started talking before I could say anything. "David, I can explain. The twins were being difficult and they wanted the pool to themselves. Jake was fine in the shed, he had his tablet and snacks. You made my 9-year-old son sit in a shed because your nieces wanted the pool to themselves?" I said, trying to control my anger. Amy laughed nervously. "Oh, Come on, David, don't be so dramatic. Jake is fine, he's just being sensitive about sharing. Emma nodded, agreeing that Jake needed to learn to be more flexible when family visits. Marcus chimed in. Look, David, I get that you love the kid, but at the end of the day, blood family comes first. The twins are our actual nieces and Jake, well, he's adopted. It's different. Emma actually nodded in agreement, saying she thought it was important for Jake to understand his place in the family structure. I stared at them in complete disbelief. This was my son they were talking about, the child I'd raised, loved, and protected for years. To them, he was just some outsider who didn't deserve the same treatment as biological family members. I didn't argue with them that night. I just told them the party was over and they needed to leave. Marcus protested, saying they'd driven an hour to get here and weren't ready to leave. I don't care, I said. The party's over. Please leave. Amy made some comment about me being unreasonable and how Jake was manipulating the situation by being upset. Marcus called me dramatic and said I was choosing an adopted kid over real family. Emma looked embarrassed but didn't defend Jake or me, she just started cleaning up without saying anything. After they left, I sat down with Jake and we had a long talk. He told me this wasn't the first time something like this had happened. When I was away, Emma would often send him to his room or outside when Marcus and Amy visited with the twins. He said he thought that's just how it was supposed to be because everyone kept saying he was different. That night after Jake went to bed, I confronted Emma about everything. She tried to downplay it, saying she was just trying to keep peace between everyone and that Jake was being too sensitive. I told her making a child sit in a shed while other kids used his pool was unacceptable. She said she didn't think it was that big of a deal and that maybe I was coddling Jake too much. The next morning I started making phone calls. I called my lawyer, my financial advisor, and started looking into our options. I'd been thinking about this all night and I realized this wasn't just about one incident, this was about a pattern of my family treating Jake as less important than Marcus's kids. I also realized Emma was complicit in this treatment. Here's something my family didn't know about my financial situation. When I got divorced, I had to pay Rachel's settlement, but I also inherited money from my maternal grandmother about a year after my divorce. She left me a substantial trust fund that I hadn't told anyone about except my lawyer and financial advisor. I'd been saving this money for Jake's college fund and our future. I also own more property than my family realized. When my grandmother died, she left me her rental properties in addition to the cash inheritance. I had 3 rental units that provided steady income. My family assumed I was struggling financially as a single parent, but I was actually doing quite well. The house Emma and I lived in was purchased entirely with my money from my inheritance and was in my name only. Emma had never contributed to the mortgage or major expenses. She had a part-time job at a boutique but spent most of her earnings on clothes and going out with friends. She assumed she had rights to the house because we were married, but she had never been added to the deed. Over the next week I quietly executed my plan. First, I met with a family therapist who specialized in adoption and blended family issues. She confirmed that Jake was being emotionally abused by being treated as less important than biological family members. She also said Emma's behavior was concerning and damaging to Jake's self-esteem. I also met with my lawyer to discuss divorce options and custody arrangements. Since Jake was legally adopted by me, Emma had no parental rights unless I granted them, and since she'd never formally adopted him, she had no legal claim to custody or visitation. I could protect Jake completely if necessary. The following Friday I told Emma I had another business trip and would be gone until Sunday. Instead, I took Jake to a nice hotel with a pool and we had a father-son weekend. We went to movies, played mini golf, and had long talks about family and love. Jake seemed happier than he'd been in weeks. While we were gone, I had a moving company come and pack up all of Jake's belongings and move them to a furnished apartment I'd rented across town near his school. I also had them remove any items from the house that belonged specifically to me, including furniture I'd brought from my previous marriage, electronics, and personal items. On Sunday evening Jake and I returned to find Emma, Marcus, Amy, and the twins at our house again. They were having another pool party and had clearly been there all day. This time they'd taken over Jake's room for the twins to nap in and had moved his belongings to the garage. Emma greeted us casually, saying she'd invited everyone over since I was supposed to be away. "Where's Jake supposed to sleep?" I asked, since his room has been taken over. Amy laughed and said he could sleep on the couch for one night, it wouldn't kill him. Marcus added that the twins needed a proper room since they were staying overnight. I looked at Jake, who was trying not to cry, then I smiled calmly. "Actually, Jake won't be sleeping here tonight or any other night. We're moving out." Emma's face went white. "What do you mean moving out?" she asked. I explained that Jake and I had gotten an apartment and would be leaving immediately. "You can't just move out," Emma said. "This is our house." "Actually, it's my house," I said, "and you've all made it clear that Jake isn't welcome here, so we're going somewhere he will be." Marcus stood up angrily, saying I was being ridiculous and that I couldn't just uproot Jake over one little disagreement. "This isn't one disagreement," I said. "This is a pattern of treating my son like he doesn't belong in his own home. I'm protecting him from people who don't value him." Amy protested, saying they did value Jake, they just thought the twins should get priority since they were visiting. "The twins will always be visiting," I said, "and Jake will always come second in this house." That's not acceptable to me. Emma started crying, saying I was destroying our marriage over a misunderstanding. There's no misunderstanding, I said. You chose to side with people who treat my son badly. That tells me everything I need to know about your priorities. I helped Jake gather his remaining personal items while my family argued and pleaded with me to reconsider. Marcus threatened to never speak to me again if I left. I told him that was his choice, but Jake's well-being came first. Emma begged me to go to counseling and work things out. I said she could have suggested that before she made Jake sit in a shed. As we were leaving, Amy made one final comment, saying I was choosing an adopted kid over real family. I stopped and looked at her. Jake is my real family, and anyone who can't see that doesn't deserve to be in our lives. The next few weeks were challenging but also liberating. Jake loved our new apartment and seemed relieved to be away from the constant tension. He made friends with kids in the building and started seeming more like his old self. Emma called constantly trying to get me to come back. She promised things would be different and that she'd stand up for Jake, but I knew it was too late. Marcus and Amy were furious. They couldn't understand why I was willing to break up the family over what they saw as a minor issue. They kept calling Jake sensitive and saying I was enabling his behavior. My parents tried to mediate, but they also seemed to think I was overreacting. I filed for divorce citing irreconcilable differences. Emma contested it initially, thinking she could get part of the house or alimony, but when she learned about my grandmother's inheritance and that the house was solely in my name, she realized she had no leverage. She'd never contributed financially to our household in any meaningful way. The divorce was finalized 4 months later. Emma moved back in with her parents and I heard she started dating someone new pretty quickly. Jake and I settled into our new routine. He was thriving in his new environment and seemed happier and more confident than he'd been in years. About 6 months after we moved out, Marcus called me one evening. David, I think we need to talk. Amy and I have been doing some thinking about everything that happened. I listened as he admitted they'd handled things poorly and said maybe they'd been insensitive about Jake's place in the family. Too little, too late, I told him. Jake heard everything you said about him not being real family. Those words can't be taken back, Marcus sighed, saying they wanted to make things right and asking if Jake and I would come to Sunday dinner to talk things through. I told Marcus I appreciated the gesture, but Jake and I had built a good life without people who made him feel unwelcome. Marcus got defensive, saying they were still family and that families work through problems. I reminded him that he was the one who said blood family comes first and that Jake wasn't blood family, so by his own logic we weren't family. The call ended awkwardly and I didn't hear from Marcus again for several months. Meanwhile, Jake and I were doing great. He joined a youth soccer league and made friends with kids who accepted him completely. He also started taking guitar lessons more seriously and was getting really good. About a year after everything happened, I met Sarah at one of Jake's soccer games. She was there watching her son play and we started talking. She was divorced too and understood the challenges of single parenting. Jake and her son became friends and Sarah and I started dating. Sarah treated Jake like he was her own son from day one. She never made him feel different or less important than any other kid. She attended his school events, cheered at his games, and helped with homework when I was traveling. Jake adored her and started calling her mom within 6 months. We got married 2 years later and Sarah officially adopted Jake. He now had a family that valued him completely and never made him question his place in it. Sarah's parents embraced Jake as their grandson and he finally experienced what it felt like to be unconditionally accepted by extended family. About 3 years after we'd moved out, Emma reached out through a mutual friend. She wanted to apologize and see how Jake was doing. I agreed to meet her for coffee. She looked different, older, and seemed genuinely remorseful. She told me she'd been going to therapy and realized how wrong she'd been about the situation with Jake. She said she understood now that she'd failed as a stepmother and had allowed my family to treat Jake badly. She asked if there was any way she could have a relationship with Jake again. I told Emma I appreciated her apology, but that ship had sailed. Jake had a loving family now with people who never made him question his worth. Emma cried and said she regretted everything but understood that some mistakes can't be undone. As for Marcus and Amy, I heard through family friends that they got divorced about 2 years after our falling out. Apparently their marriage couldn't survive the financial stress when Marcus lost his job and they had to downsize significantly. The twins now split time between both parents and from what I heard, they struggled with the divorce. My parents eventually reached out wanting to rebuild our relationship. They admitted they'd been wrong to not defend Jake and said they missed both of us. I was cautious but agreed to let them visit. Jake was hesitant at first but gradually warmed up to them when they consistently treated him with love and respect. Today Jake is 15 and thriving. He's an honor student, plays varsity soccer, and is an accomplished guitarist. He's confident, secure, and knows he's loved unconditionally. Sarah and I had a daughter together 2 years ago and Jake is an amazing big brother who never questions his place in our family. Looking back, I don't regret my decision to leave that situation. Jake deserved better than being treated like a second-class family member by people who should have protected and loved him. Sometimes you have to make difficult choices to protect the people you love most. The most important lesson from all this is that family isn't defined by blood, it's defined by love, respect, and commitment. Jake, Sarah, our daughter, and I have built a beautiful family together based on those values, and Jake never has to wonder if he belongs. People sometimes ask if I think I was too harsh in cutting off my brother and divorcing Emma. The answer is no. Children can't advocate for themselves, adults have to protect them. Sometimes that means making hard choices and facing criticism from people who don't understand. Jake is happy, healthy, and secure in a family that celebrates him. That's what matters most to me. Everything else was just noise that I had to eliminate to give him the life he deserved. Update: a lot of people have asked for an update, so here it is. Jake and I are doing amazing. He's now a junior in high school and just got accepted to a prestigious summer music program. He's also being recruited by several colleges for soccer. I couldn't be prouder. Sarah and I celebrated our 3rd wedding anniversary last month. Jake gave a speech at our wedding reception 3 years ago that had everyone in tears. He talked about finally understanding what real family meant and how grateful he was to have people who chose to love him unconditionally. My relationship with my parents has improved significantly. They now treat Jake exactly like they treat Sarah's daughter. They remember his preferences, buy thoughtful gifts, and brag about his accomplishments to their friends. They've learned that love isn't limited by biology. Marcus reached out again recently. He and Amy did get divorced and he's been doing some serious self-reflection. He asked if we could meet for coffee to apologize properly. I agreed and he genuinely seemed remorseful. He admitted that losing his marriage and seeing his daughter struggle with divorce made him realize how destructive his attitude had been. I accepted his apology but told him our relationship would take time to rebuild. He understood and said he was willing to do whatever it takes. He's been sending birthday cards to Jake and asking about his soccer games. It's a start, but Jake gets to decide if and when he wants a relationship with his uncle. Emma never remarried and I heard she's been volunteering with adoption agencies, working with families to help them understand the challenges adopted children face. She sent Jake a letter on his 16th birthday apologizing for how she treated him and wishing him well. Jake read it but didn't respond, which I think was the right choice. The most surprising development is that Jake has become an advocate for adopted children at school. He started a support group for kids who've experienced family rejection or discrimination because of their adoption status. His guidance counselor says he has a gift for helping other kids feel valued and accepted. Jake still doesn't know all the details about the financial aspects of what happened when we left. He knows we moved because some family members weren't treating him well, but I've protected him from the uglier details. Maybe someday when he's older I'll tell him everything, but for now he just knows he's loved and that I'll always fight for him. Sometimes people ask if I regret being so decisive about leaving that situation. The answer is absolutely not. Jake deserved protection and advocacy, and sometimes that requires taking dramatic action. I would make the same choices again tomorrow to ensure his happiness and security. The most important thing I learned from this experience is that protecting your children sometimes means losing other relationships, but children can't protect themselves. Adults have to be willing to make hard choices and face criticism to give kids the love and respect they deserve. Jake, Sarah, our daughter, and I have built something beautiful together based on mutual respect, unconditional love, and the understanding that family is about choice and commitment, not just biology. That's the legacy I want to leave for both my children.